end of the world. I could feel all this death.
Everything they built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
Powerful spring storms this morning are sweeping across the southern United States. At least 4 tornadoes hit Oklahoma Wednesday. About 7 people were hurt. Other twisters touched down in Arkansas and Kansas.
The massive storm system is on the move this morning. Heavy rain and flash flooding are forecast for the southeast through Friday. Manuel Bojorquez is in Tulsa, Oklahoma with a look at the damaging tornadoes. Manuel, good morning.
Good morning. The heaviest damage here in Tulsa covers about a square mile, and you can see the power of the tornado right here where it knocked down the brick wall of this beauty supply store. Not only that, it lifted off the roof. There is now merchandise scattered everywhere here. A community center next door and a church down the street look about the same.
It is on the ground at the quarries, moving eastbound.
Multiple tornadoes ripped across northeastern Oklahoma Wednesday evening.
Here's the debris off of some roofs. I hope people are taking cover in this area as it continues to move.
CBS affiliate KOTV captured the chaos from their helicopter.
And we have it on the ground, debris out in this area. We can see some farm buildings and outbuildings right now. We have it on the ground, and this looks to be a little bit stronger than even earlier.
On the ground, violent winds pounded suburban neighborhoods, leveling houses and uprooting trees. An adult and 3 children were in this pickup truck when a tree crashed on top of it. The family was hospitalized with no major injuries. Tornado sirens rang out.
And I see a funnel cloud, debris just going around in circles.
Dee Gillespie says he had just 2 minutes to get to safety before one of the tornadoes hit.
Boom, all the high winds just came through and just tore up everything, broke out windows. It was pretty intense.
Trees snapped power lines. As many as 5,800 homes and businesses lost power. First responders have been searching homes through the night, looking for survivors. So far, there are no reports of missing people. 4 Tulsa schools have decided to cancel classes for today, and the National Weather Service will be on site trying to determine the intensity of those tornadoes by assessing damage on the ground like this.
2 flight attendants are hurt this morning after the storms rocked their plane and forced an emergency landing. American Eagle Flight 3358 left Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport yesterday, bound for Memphis. Passengers say the plane suddenly dropped, sending a drink cart flying on top of 2 crew members.
It was actually 2 of them that got hurt fairly. I mean, they were bleeding and stuff. And shortly after that drop that we had, the pilot got on and said that we had to make an emergency landing.
No passengers were hurt. Now, shortly after that flight, our David Begnaud took another flight from Dallas to Memphis. He arrived safely and is there to show us how flooding and hail hit several states. David, good morning.
Good morning. We were supposed to get in at 10 o'clock last night, but we didn't arrive until 3 a.m. this morning. Our pilot was mindful of what had happened on that earlier flight, and so after talking with a meteorologist and watching the radar, he kept pushing back our flight. The people on board our airline did not mind. Here in Memphis, there is no rain right now, but they've already set a record for the month of March. They got 2.73 inches of rain in 6 hours. It's the wettest March on record here. Just over the border in North Little Rock, Arkansas, a record 4.9 inches of rain fell in just under 24 hours. That sent rushing floodwater over clogged roads, hampering drivers and creating dangerous conditions. Rescue crews dragged 3 people out of Rock Creek in the heart of Little Rock. They held onto a tree for safety after their car was swept away in the storm.
Somebody needs to go help him.
All of it happening while high water rushed through parking lots, making even heavy dumpsters float away. Also overnight, a hailstorm rocked Kansas, crisscrossing the entire state. The barrage of ice, rain, and wind sent people outside and drivers scrambling. In Cassaway, Kansas, the wind whipped the rain into near blinding conditions. While in El Dorado, they had hail the size of tennis balls that smashed windows and pierced the walls of houses. One family's home was seriously damaged.
Sounded like quarters on the roof to about golf ball size hail. It sounded like basically like a hurricane was outside the front door.
And back here in Memphis, you were in the bullseye for today's severe weather threat. It starts in the Ohio Valley and extends down toward Louisiana. North Louisiana is where we were just 3 weeks ago. They saw flooding that they hadn't seen in more than 75 years. And now Louisiana will get more rain today.
Our crews have been following this sinkhole growing all day long. Listen, we even did live cut-ins throughout most of the morning because we just didn't know how big it was going to get. But this perspective is absolutely incredible, taken from a drone by a local drone pilot, Adam Kimbrell. Now take a look at this video here. You can see where that white fence used to be, the sinkhole actually swallowing all of that, even taking out part of the road. And you see it looks like it's almost like a muddy pool there because there's so much water still at the bottom of that sinkhole. It gets us a lot closer than the chopper could have, that drone video. And when we heard this sinkhole could be 100 feet wide and 60 feet deep, even near those mobile homes, we wanted to show you how deep that really is. From the first floor to the second floor here of our newsroom, that's about 20 feet. If crews are right, this sinkhole could be 3 times this depth. And check this out. A single wide mobile home is about 18 feet wide and 90 feet long. So if it's really as big as the crews do think it is, an entire mobile home could possibly fit inside.
A major dust storm caused a traffic accident in California. You can see all the dust there. Reduced visibility down to 0 with winds at times blowing over 40 miles per hour. 15 vehicles were involved in this chain reaction crash. Police say 28 people were hurt near Lucerne Valley, which is about 100 miles east of Los Angeles.
A bridge collapse in eastern India has killed at least 10 people. It happened on a busy road in North Kolkata in Bengal state. These pictures show the moment the flyover came crashing down on top of cars. Many are feared to be trapped beneath that rubble. Rescue teams and firefighters are at the scene. Divya Gopalan has more from New Delhi.
The main concern is that this has happened in a very busy area with commercial and residential complexes nearby. There's also a metro station and a market in the surrounding areas. Now, the construction area should have been cordoned off, but locals say there were no barricades. They often passed freely under the construction, and vehicles were also parked under the bridge. Many people fear that there are people trapped in those vehicles under the debris. Heavy machinery is needed for the search and rescue operation to lift heavy concrete and iron structures. They are on the way. The Army, though, has arrived at the scene to help with the mission. There have been many questions about this bridge even before the accident. It has been in construction for over 6 years with delays time and time again. And the builders were under pressure to finish it off quickly. Now, politicians are also taking advantage of the situation. The chief minister is there. She's stopped her campaigning to be at the scene of the accident, but the politicians are pointing fingers at each other and playing the blame game, saying that it's irresponsibility and corruption that is behind the accident.
Breaking news out of Japan this morning. An offshore earthquake has hit the Pacific coast of Japan, spread to the center of that country near Osaka. No tsunami warnings have followed the 6-magnitude quake, at least at this point. There are no immediate reports of damage or injuries.
The Pentagon says 670 dependents of U.S. military personnel would be affected by the departure order. Officials say the move does not indicate a permanent end to families' presence at U.S. military facilities in the country. And State Department spokesperson John Kirby says the order is not the result of any specific threat and has nothing to do with this week's visit to Washington by top Turkish officials.
The decision to do this, first of all, wasn't taken lightly. It was done after careful thought and consideration and interagency coordination, I might add. And I think it's very much a result of our ongoing assessment of security conditions there in Turkey and in recognition of the threat environment in Adana, specifically in southeastern Turkey, from a regional perspective.
Наземный комплекс, как вы видели, мобильный, при этом обладает хорошим блоком, в который входят оптико-электронные средства, тепловизор, лазерные дальномеры, баллистические вычислители. Он способен вести огонь по противнику на расстоянии до 400 метров. Вдобавок, технические средства, которые на нем установлены, способны обнаруживать нарушителя как в дневное, так и в ночное время.
Now to a terror plot stopped just in time. Authorities saying they stopped a, quote, imminent attack in France, arresting a suspect with an arsenal of explosives and guns. ABC's Alex Marquardt is in Paris and has the latest for us. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, Robin. That's right. It had all the makings of another Paris-style attack. The authorities saying that they stopped the plot in its final stages. And just moments ago, reports from Brussels that there are raids ongoing connected to the man at the center of it all.
It was here that Reda Criquet, a 34-year-old Frenchman, was planning what authorities now say was an imminent attack on French soil. When the police raided the apartment, which Criquet rented under a fake name and paid for in cash, they found an arsenal that the Paris prosecutor called unprecedented. 5 AK-47 rifles, 7 handguns, TATP, the explosive used in both the Paris and Brussels ISIS attacks, detonators, acid, and thousands of ball bearings. Now, Criquet has been charged with preparing an attack and participating in a terror group. He's not believed to have been acting alone. At least 4 others linked to Criquet have been detained in Holland and Belgium in the past few days. Criquet's ties to terror were well known. He was sentenced in absentia last year for being part of a network recruiting jihadists to fight in Syria, which he did himself. Sentenced with him, the Paris attacks ringleader Abdelhamid Abaoud.
And we've just learned minutes ago that there is a second suspect at large connected to the Brussels attacks. There was the man in the hat at the airport, and now a second man seen on surveillance camera at the metro station that was attacked. Those two, the most wanted men in Europe.
This bus terminal was packed with commuters. Now it's the scene of more bloodshed on the streets of Diyarbakir. A car full of explosives was detonated remotely. The force of the blast so strong, it blew out the windows of nearby buildings. A passing bus reduced to a burnt-out wreck.
Suddenly we heard a loud noise. The building shook. I thought it was thunder and lightning hitting the house. I ran outside and I was told a bomb had exploded.
I was sitting at the till in my shop when suddenly the window exploded on my head. It took me by surprise, but I didn't know it was a bomb which had destroyed the building. I saw my sister bleeding and I had to take her to hospital.
The target doesn't appear to be civilians, but the bus, which was carrying Turkish police special forces. Initial reports suggest it was travelling past the terminal when the car exploded, killing many on board. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who's away in the United States, was quick to point out that Turkey's doing all it can to stop such attacks, despite the growing frequency of bombings in recent months.
These attacks will never keep us from fighting terrorists. We are cornering terrorist organisations. Terrorism is showing its heinous face through such acts. We are determined to make sure that terrorism is no longer an obstacle to the progress in our country.
Diyarbakir is a mostly Kurdish city and has been under a curfew designed to flush out what the government calls terrorist fighters. This attack could be a planned warning, happening just one day before Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu is due to visit. Joanna Blundell, Al Jazeera.
It's horrific to watch. Albuquerque Police Lieutenant Greg Brackle shooting one of his own.
Oh, that was Jacob!
Intense moments to what should have been a routine drug bust. Watch just minutes earlier. That's when Brackle moves in. He speeds through this McDonald's parking lot, gets out,
hands up! Hands up!
Approaches the vehicle when all of a sudden...
Good!
Brackle fires several times before retreating behind a nearby vehicle. It takes him a few seconds to realize what he's done.
Oh, that was Jacob! Come to me! Are you okay? No. Come on out, dude! Come on! I'm sorry, man! I didn't know it was you! Come here! Come here, Jacob! Jacob!
Brackle is in complete shock. You hear him crying as he pulls Jacob out of the car and tells him to hold on.
Jacob, hang in there, man!
You're good.
Jacob! Jacob!
Investigators say Brackle never attended the briefing for this operation. Grant was shot 8 times, bullets hitting most of his vital organs. Several surgeries later, and he is still recovering from his injuries.
Jacob, man, hang in there, bro! I thought you were a bad guy!
Well, let's start with Detective Grant. He survived. He was critically injured. He has had multiple surgeries. He is still physically recovering at home. Now, he sued the city following this incident. This all happened back in January of 2015, but we just are getting this video, which is why it's making news today. And just this week, there was a settlement reached in that civil suit, $6.5 million awarded to Detective Grant. The city also agreeing to pay all of his medical bills for the rest of his life. And he has been approved now to medically retire from the Albuquerque Police Department. As for Lieutenant Brackle, he too has retired. There was an investigation done by a citizen police oversight agency who had recommended that Lieutenant Brackle be fired, but by the time that recommendation came down, he had already retired. There is still a criminal open case here, though. The investigation just wrapped up and has been now handed over to the prosecutor's office, who will ultimately determine whether Lieutenant Brackle faces any criminal charges, Pamela, so we'll be watching.
Take a look at this volcano behind me. It's continuing to erupt, spewing ash. The Pavlov volcano in Alaska erupted Sunday. This is the first eruption for the volcano since 2014. The ash plume is now 37,000 feet high and trails some 400 miles to the northeast over the Alaskan interior. So how is this eruption affecting the weather? We want to bring in Charlie Manville with the USGS Volcano Hazards Program. Good morning to you, Charlie. Let's first start. This volcano is in such a remote area. Why should people care that this happened?
Anaritis, these volcanoes in Alaska are capable of injecting ash to 20,000 and 40,000 feet where commercial airliners fly in. So we've got to really monitor them closely because they pose a threat to air traffic over the North Pacific and the Alaska region.
This particular eruption was significant enough to actually have an impact on air travel. I know you have a threshold when it comes to what type of impact it has on the atmosphere. What is that, and when does it start impacting long-term weather patterns?
Well, actually, you can think of the ash as really being almost like a dye experiment. It's a discrete point injection. And so when it goes up into the atmosphere, because it's buoyant and it's hot, it actually shows us the direction of the stratospheric winds. And right now they're carrying that ash to the northeast, and the plume is visible for over 400 miles. The other thing that we need to do is we need to alert all the commercial air traffic and aviation sector about the ash-contaminated airspace, because ash and jet engines don't mix. You can have catastrophic engine failure if the engine ingests too much ash.
And also, quickly, if you can tell us about the impact it has on people. We do have people that actually live out in many communities nearby. It not only impacts their respiratory system, but even a centimeter matters, you say, of ash.
Yes, as little as a centimeter or centimeter and a half of ash accumulation on transmission power lines can actually cause arcing and take the power grid down. As well as when ash builds up to more than, several centimeters, if it gets wet, it becomes very heavy and you can have secondary hazards from roof collapse.
All right, Charlie Manville with the USGS, thank you so much for joining us this morning in your Insight.